Okay, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the Trailer Fitters Toolbox. We're going to do a tool review today, and I'm going to give you the heads up on a light vehicle bearing puller and installer. This one is from Blue Spot Tools. It's a 23-piece front wheel drive bearing puller and installer. And guys who know straight away what this application is good for, but I will explain it through the video, because what I like to do is to look at the way tools are made and see how I can use them in different applications, because you never have enough tools for jobs. However, this is a universal tool, and you can see here how it's used to pull a bearing out. Okay, so you get a set of adapters. You do not get instructions with this kit. However, it is fairly straightforward when you know how to pull and push bearings out. Okay, so bearings are interference fits, so you need adapters that fit somewhere around the outer edge without catching. So I'm always looking at different ways to use tools, and I always look at the way components are put together. So I'm going to highlight this here. This is a bush for wishbone on the Corsa, and you can see how it is installed. Okay, it has a sleeve, it has an outer sleeve which is pushed into place. So looking on eBay and looking for tools and bushes, I can see here that we have the bush kit which is available for us, and this is pretty good because I can knock the center out and use the tool to strip the collar out with no issues, and I can adapt the tool to make it fit to get the bush back in. But basically we are going to concentrate on a wheel bearing today. So the kit price I am not going to tell you, I will reveal it later in the video. So this is a puller and an installer, and the installation of a bearing is just basically pushing it back into place without damaging it. With this tool you do not need a hydraulic press, because basically most guys will use a hydraulic press to remove bearings and install them, but that does have troubles within itself, and I will explain that in this video. But I found this kit is basically, it's invaluable. As soon as I saw it I thought, yeah, I've got to have that. Now you can always machine other adapters and fittings because it is that adaptable. In a workshop environment, if you know somebody who's a turner, you can adapt tools. Now this is a suspension bush removal and installation tool. This is a hydraulic or air over hydraulic installation and removal tool for bushes, but you could use it for wheel bearings as well. As you can see here, you have the sleeves, you have threaded bars, which means the principle is exactly the same for bearing pulling as it is for bush pulling and installing. The weakest part of the tool is this threaded bar, but it is replaceable, and I would expect that if you're going to use it a lot you will be replacing both the nuts and the bar at some point, which is not really an issue. You can always get heavily threaded bars. Now the adapters, you have to work out what you need because you do not get the instructions. However, they are very heavily constructed, and I was impressed with this. The whole kit is very heavy. Now I've got a front wheel drive hub from the Corsa C, our project, the Fly, and we need to replace the wheel bearing. So the first thing to do is to remove the hub which is pushed into the bearing center. And I've got to take this off as well. That was taken off by a scrappy and he left it on there. The wheel bearing itself has failed. You can see that has plain. It is no use, so it needs to go and a fresh one put in. This I would always advise people to do is to always assess your jobs to find the simplest and quickest way of doing things. We're not using a press. Now I have a hub already here, and you can see by the use of a socket I can remove this. Now, first of all, I think I'd better do the vise up a bit tighter, because a few whacks and that will come out of the vise. You can see here I'm using a copper hammer with the tool so it doesn't damage them, and there you go. It's that easy. It comes out that easy. So we had a little bit of a laugh when we were making this video with our new apprentice. He's only been here a week. Got him to put a Circlip in. Now he got it in the wrong way, and that just disappeared off the Circlip pliers. There is only one way a Circlip goes in, and that's because the holes are tapered. Now snap this into place, and You do have to compromise when you use Circlip pliers unless you have a big comprehensive set, because these are actually big circlips that are in the hubs. So here's a tip: when you're fitting or removing circlips, give them a tap around so they move. Now in this case I'm seating them, but if you were going to remove them, then use a chisel or a punch to move them before you use the Circlip pliers. So let me introduce you to our 60-ton press. This is also for pressing out wheel bearings, but larger ones. Now the biggest trouble you have with a hydraulic press is the odd shape of the bearing carrier. Okay, now guys have got in a lot of trouble pushing wheel bearings in, bending all sorts of bits and breaking them off. So you could technically just use a sleeve like this, and it's mounted in such a way where you can push the bearing back in and don't put pressure on any other part of the components other than the back part. I've seen it where these have been bent and caused all sorts of issues, but this is totally manual. Now the adapters, this helps you to pull the bearing out, and of course this is the setup you will use using the longer nut at the back. This is the right setup. Okay, it's a 27 and a 32mm spanner you need, and it's fairly hefty. And look, this came out with relative ease, although it does take a little bit of time. All these jobs take time and patience, but there you go, as easy as that. And it is an interference fit, so there won't be any corrosion in there. So installing a bearing back onto a hub, you need an adapter which is not going to go over the size of the outer edge of the bearing. And now I'll show you this because our young lad found it a little bit odd installing it. You only get like 2 threads on the end using a large sleeve on the back. Okay, and this is not good simply because the threads themselves can get stripped straight away, so you need as much thread through as you can. Now I'm using the stepped adapter on the front, and I do have a long piece of thread. Now this is sensibly engineered because there's not thread all the way through the large nut, as you can see. Yeah, okay, so instead of putting it on like that, you put it on like this, okay, which means you're not going to get as much time wasted while you're winding. Okay, so this is the principle for putting the bearing back in. And other than using a young man's labour, this didn't take too long at all. So the whole job of removing and replacing the bearing was probably about 15 minutes, which is good, yeah. If you can install this on a car, I doubt it very much. You have to remove the hub to do the job, because you cannot get at the back of it to take the drive hub off. So our young man here is happy. He's learned something, and his eyes are thinking, yeah, actually I can use this on my car at home. Yeah, so Circlip in, all good. Now I've just got to tell him, because he's learning the job right now, is just to tap this and seat it properly, so we won't have any problems down the road. Now for the wheel flange, you can use this to install as well. And what I will tell you here, and I've done this myself, I've pushed the hub back in and ended up to putting the rear part of the bearing out. Okay, so you need to hold it in a way which you're holding the back of the bearing, okay, without interfering with the installation of the hub. Okay, well that is in, that's good. Okay, if you do not do this, you'll find that the rear part of the bearing will be pushed out as you push the hub in. Little bit of a tip from Uncle Trailer Fitter there. Okay, so these adapters, yeah, pretty good. As I say, they are a compromise to push the bearing in, and be careful not to damage the seals when you're pushing in. Okay, so there we go, that's the job done, finished. Well happy with this, and the whole job with the hubs that were stripped on the bench took me, well, an hour total. So I would recommend this tool in any DIY garage situation. If you have a vice and you have a few extra tools, then this is invaluable if you're doing restorations or repairs. It will pay for itself very, very quickly. And because it's simply engineered, if you know engineers or anybody with a lathe, you can always have things made up for you. You can replace these parts to keep this tool going. It's invaluable. It's absolutely invaluable because it's so basic. But from what I understand, there is actually a lifetime's guarantee on these blue spot tools, so you're onto a winner there. An assessment from my point of view, I would have thought this kit would be worth about £150. However, looking on Amazon, you got $74.99. You go onto eBay, $59.69, and then down to $58.99, which is horrendously cheap, to be honest with you. Now, a little bit of a tip here. If you're a prepper, like I am, a survivalist, and a mechanic, you want to save components like this for installation and removal. We have loads of rubbish here, which is all useful. Now, I also keep the bearings just in case for slingshots and the such like, and they also come off for blanking plugs as well. So here's a bonus tip for our diligent students that watched it to the end. Now, this drive hub flange, the bearings sometimes get stuck and we have to do all sorts of exotic things like welding a ring around it or cutting to be able to get it off, because it's hard to get a puller onto these damn things, and it is common practice. You can see where the angle grinder has cut it, which relieves the pressure. So you're able to use something like a chisel to tap it and remove it. Heat does work to a point, however, when you're heating it and then tapping it, you can't touch it with your hands, but it will come off. And we are fairly practiced at this, and you need to make sure that you don't damage the drive flange shaft. So you can see where I've just cut this with a slitting disc. Okay, unfortunately I nicked it a little bit, which is okay because there is a fair bit of metal there, but just watch out in the future if you're doing this to be careful with your angle grinder.